What does the second coming of Donald Trump mean for the US and the rest of the world? How will people who consider themselves liberal, centrist, feminist respond to his emphatic win in the world's most powerful democracy? And does this re-election challenge the international rules-based order any more this time than it did last time around? I've been speaking to the historian Sir Simon Schama and Timothy Garton, historian and author of Homelands, A Personal History of Europe, about whether we are at the end of a liberal rules-based world order. But first, I asked Simon Schama why we were even asking this question at all, whether it's a question that's only being asked by liberals who don't like that Donald Trump won an election.
The news are hungry for the next thing. I mean, they thrive on manufactured drama. You could say however much you hated the result. I couldn't possibly have hated it more. Democracy actually worked in America. Nobody this time is suggesting that there was something kind of structurally, institutionally wrong with it. So the answer to really whether or not this is a real sea change will come with actually how Trump's government works. For instance, will he be able to fire, and possibly he may, federal employees at will because they're insufficiently political loyal. So we won't really find out until the government has had some time. The only other thing I'd say is that if you actually look at Poland, if you look at the Balts, they're not just going to kind of lie down or fall down like kind of spent matchsticks, really. So the weakness of liberal democracy is as weak as we decide to panic over. I don't know if Tim feels the same way.
Why do we think that Trump 2.0 will be any different than Trump 1.0, which was followed by a Biden-Harris administration? So it was not as if it was the end of democracy or the end of people voting for the Democrats in the US. Timothy?
No.
Because Trump 2.0 has learned from the failures of Trump 1.0 when he was surrounded by so-called grown-ups who restrained him. I think the threat to liberal democracy in the United States is a bit more serious than that. He will potentially control both Congress, the House and the Senate, and the presidency, and have a very sympathetic Supreme Court. So the separation of powers is quite weakened, and he has a plan, as Simon said, to politicize the whole bureaucracy and further undermine the rule of law. So I think that there is a task to be done in defending the Republic and defending liberal democracy more broadly. But as Simon rightly says, Poland is a wonderful example of a country where democracy was very seriously undermined. It was halfway to Viktor Orban's Hungary, which is no longer democracy, but then they turned it around.
Okay. And just for the rest of the world, Simon Schama, hasn't Trump got a point? Isn't it time that, NATO looked after itself a little bit, that European countries with Russia on their eastern front should be paying to look after themselves? And if we have to pull up our socks in our own defence, that's no bad thing.
Trump has also said, actually, which of course his acolytes will say was done in a humorous moment, that his approach to NATO is not unlike that of a mob boss. He sees it transactionally as a kind of quid pro quo. You pay up for your protection. And, that kind of understanding of what NATO is about, actually, a kind of exchange and mart understanding, is catastrophic. And he has promised, of course, this is the first of the promises, which I think both Tim and I will confidently say will not be fulfilled, to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. I mean, if that's achieved, it's otherwise called a capitulation.
Well, I was going to ask that question. If you basically draw the lines, or the new lines on the map where the current battlefield lines are drawn, does that amount to appeasement? What is the danger there?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's exactly that. But it would be absolutely staggering after all this horrific sacrifice of lives. Zelensky. Did you notice that actually Elon Musk was on a phone call that Trump made to Zelensky? It's profoundly sinister, mitigated only by idiotic incompetence, really. Elon Musk is also someone who's claimed he can cut $2 trillion from the federal budget, which is more than the departments of defense, education, and homeland security combined. So they may think they're masters of the universe and they're a particular AI world, but governing is a completely different thing. And NATO is based on the honourable combined defence of democracy. It's been the greatest and most successful military alliance in the modern period. So that's not going to happen.
Timothy, are we not already in a post-Western world in many ways, with China, Russia, for example, changing the polarity of international politics?
Yes, I think we are. So there are a couple of things going on here. One is Trump, who is, thank God, unique, but that matters. The second is that there's been a trend for at least 20 years since George W. Bush of diminishing US commitment to an interest in Europe. And that's going to be turbocharged under Donald Trump. He's not going to support Ukraine. We can't totally rely on him to defend Europe in NATO. And he's certainly not going to defend the liberal international order. His America for the next 4 years is going to be nationalist, protectionist, and transactional. We in Britain, in Europe, like-minded countries like Canada and Australia, we have to support Ukraine starting January 20th. We have to do more for our own defense. And I totally agree. 80 years after the end of the Second World War, that's a quite reasonable suggestion that we should defend ourselves. We have to defend the liberal order. But we're going to have to do that in a world where power has massively shifted to major non-Western great and middle powers. China, a superpower, India, Russia, Turkey, Brazil, South Africa. And all of them actually behave like 19th century European great powers. They calmly pursue their national interests. They're entirely transactional. They are, as it were, if you like, geopolitical swingers. They'll sleep with anybody when it suits their interests, with Russia or China and another.
On that racy note, can I just say, Simon Schama, a final thought? The great, so, if you are of your mind, the good news for you is that you can vote for somebody else on 4 years, and because he can only serve 2 terms and would need a special majority in both houses of Congress to change that, it's a 4-year thing.
Amendment. He needs 2/3 majority in both houses of Congress and 3/4 of the states of the United States. So that ain't going to happen.
All right. On that note, thank you both indeed, very much indeed. Simon Schama, Timothy Garton, thank you both.
At a quarter to 9, let's turn our attention.